Cecilia Borromeo. Hi, Cecil. Sit down. Next up is the President and CEO of Summit Media and the General Manager of the Gokongwei Brothers Foundation Incorporated. She's also the SVP of Digital Transformation and Corporate Services for JG Summit Holdings Incorporated. Let's all welcome Ms. Liza Gokongwei Chen. Next up is the country chair of Shell Companies of the Philippines, the president and CEO of Philippine Shell Petroleum, VP for Global Finance Operations Expenditure in Shell Shared Services Asia, Ms. Laurelie Cambao Oshia. And last, but certainly not the least, the Secretary of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources of the Philippines. She was also the president of the National Resilience Council, the Honorable Secretary Antonia Yulo Rizal. So welcome, ladies. I hope you guys are, I think they got the memo. Isn't it adorable they're wearing the same colored shirts? I didn't, obviously. So anyway, it just gives a better contrast to how this conversation will actually go. So let's get right into it. Without a doubt, the greatest global challenge took us all by surprise, as you know, a couple of years ago. Our objective for this panel is to gain insights as to how different industries, specifically yours, have survived and I know have thrived prior, during, and hopefully near the tail end of the global health crisis. So let me ask some basic questions about how you guys have really dealt with the pandemic and how your organizations have moved towards this. So how did your organization cope with remote work arrangements? What are the challenges and what other things that did you do to overcome them? I'll start with you, Cecil. Of course, the banking industry is one of the industries that thrived throughout this pandemic.
Yeah, as a universal bank with a social mission, the challenge really for Land Bank at the onset of the pandemic is how to ensure uninterrupted banking services to our customers under a pandemic scenario that limited mobility and also with very strict health protocols. And another challenge was we were looking for ways to meet the expectations of our customers that were rapidly shifting to digital channels, and we know that there are a lot of fintechs out there who can actually also serve the digital financial services requirements of customers. So the challenge was how to keep them in the Land Bank ecosystem. And another very serious challenge was how to cope with the heightened cyber threats to make customers, transactions of the customers secure. So first off, to meet those challenges, we ramp up on the expansion and improvement of our digital channels. And we also look at partnering with other service providers to increase the touch points for our customers. So we partnered with agent banking institutions or partners. These are the cash-rich businesses in the remote areas to make sure that our services to the underserved communities will continue. And we also partnered with 7-Eleven to increase the number of our ATMs. And we beefed up our cybersecurity defenses. So on the human resource, we adopted alternative work arrangements. So at the height of the pandemic, probably 80 or 90% of our workforce were working in their homes. And so we relied heavily on the VPNs to ensure that the information assets of the bank are secured even if we allow our personnel to work from crafted platoon-like work arrangement, making sure that our branches are adequately manned because tellers obviously cannot work from home. So we have to have enough tellers to man our branches and attend to the customers that needed to go to our branches.
Yeah, I can just imagine, obviously, cybersecurity is of optimum concern, especially for financial institution, right? And it would be really funny. Obviously, you have to tell me that tellers you cannot deal with tellers virtually. And although you can actually transfer money now virtually, so but that's another discussion. Thank you very much, Cecil, for giving us that insight. Liza, and you wear many hats. Obviously, the Gokongwei Group, from media and all of these other things. How did the Gokongwei Group deal with this? Especially if you could talk to us about some of the companies that have been affected by the past pandemic. Well, it's the thing.
Sure. I guess we're talking about how people adapted to remote working now. Luckily, right before the pandemic happened, we also shifted everyone to Microsoft Teams.
Right before?
Just right before. And it was so funny because I think it was 3 or 4 months before the pandemic. No one wanted to use Teams. And there was some frustration with the group that it wasn't being used. And then suddenly when this hit and we all had to work remotely, the adoption was practically 100%. Having said that, depending on which part of the Gokongwei Group that you worked with, the Summit Media, which I run, went completely remote. After all, most of our teams are journalists and tech people now. So you don't necessarily have to go to work to be productive.
Right.
However, it also depended on the personality of the president. My sister Robina who's my ate, her personality is also very, I have to shop for work. I have to be dutiful, So she was there practically every day during the pandemic. Even if she didn't require her people to go to work, she would show up. So she wanted to be that good example. For her, if the people are showing up in operations, in the stores, then we in the back offices have to show up as well. So it really, and then for URC, it was different also. They would be hybrid. The people in the headquarters could work from home if they wanted to. They would be encouraged to go to work. Like there were collaboration days, so they would show up for work during collaboration days. But of course, the people who worked in the factories, still had to show up. So in the bank, similar to Langbank, they really had to go to work as well. So the Gokongwei Group was quite flexible in that regard. It really depended on the nature of the work that you were doing.
Right, and that's interesting because it's actually a similar story with us in PLDT. We're also on that same platform, and right before I think that was the middle of March of 2020 that we were all forced to go on lockdown. Right? But I guess the message here is that we were kind of forced into doing it, and now it's fast becoming second nature. Thank you, Liza. Was it the same, Laurelie, in the Shell Group? You have been with Shell for the past 20 years, yes?
Yes, I have.
And I've been chatting with you about, let's talk about that later, about the trips to Iraq, your weekly trips to Iraq. But please, tell us more about how Shell actually coped and thrived with the new normal.
Yeah. So I guess I'll speak in the context of Shell companies in the Philippines, which is different companies. And it covers, so we have the country operations and country business. At the same time, we also have shared services that supports over 50 countries around the world and 80,000 employees. I'll speak, I guess, on Filipina Shell Foundation as well. So 4,700 people, quite diversified. And for us, it depends on the work that you do. I think quite similar to what Liza was saying and what Cecil was saying as well. So we did have to have people on site. We had people who still had to go out, not on site, and we had office-based workers. So for us, across the different companies, we focus on the three C's. So care, continuity, and cash. So we already had quite a robust healthcare, in-house healthcare system, so we really have to pivot that and adjust that and make sure that everyone is safe, whether they're at home or whether they're going to sign. And then really looking at continuity. There are a lot of people who depend on Shell, so making sure that we continue to supply high quality goods and services. And of course, with the restrictions, the lockdowns, there was a big impact to mobility, big impact to the industries that we support. And also, even before the pandemic, you already had weakening refinery margins because of the imbalance of supply and demand. And that got impacted as well. So we need to look after that. So really looking after that moment, but then also making sure that we're financially resilient in the future. On remote working, so we did have to continue to be attuned and listen to what was happening externally and to our employees as well in different ways of working, equipping people to work in a virtual remote environment, different leadership styles, engagement methods as well, and adjusting in terms of when we would return to the office, and then future of work. I think now for office-based staff that we are functioning, work arrangements are more in the hybrid working arrangements, maximizing anchored in the office, but then really purposeful, maximizing collaboration, problem solving, innovation when you're in the office, building culture and teams, and where you need to have meetings with to support other countries and then ended up home. So we're doing a mix. Depends on what is needed by our users and customers. And for us, as we're going back to the office and also looking at, I guess, ambidextrous leadership in terms of how you're managing on-site physical with virtual or both, and looking at our office spaces in terms of how to improve, optimize, and maximize productivity. Maybe shifting from more collaboration spaces over more individual tasks. So that continues to be a journey, and I think there is more to come on that one. It's quite good to experiment and learn, continue to learn at this point in time.
I really like that, the three C's, care, continuity, and cash. In PLDT, we have three C's, but it's cloud, collocation, for you guys, for all of you and some of our partners, and the customer. So, although it's not really pandemic related, but that's where we're intended. Tony, you bring in a very new dynamic in the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Where you're at is that, given the new dynamic in DNR, do you guys practice hybrid work, or everybody goes to work nowadays, or any technologies or your own philosophy in this new, I don't want to call it new normal, but existing normal, I guess?
Thank you. Everyone needs to go to work every day, and on weekends too, if they're required. So the work is public service, and so we must be there to deliver. When the pandemic started, of course, I was with the National Resilience Council, and we work completely remote. Capacity building is the core of the work, and therefore we work with local government units, with academia, with civil society, in trying to build capacity for climate disaster resilience, and all of that had to migrate virtual platforms. So the training and education, as well as the other capacity building work that had to be done globally with some experts, and of course locally all the way down to the planning and development officer, for example, the local government unit, all of that remote. But in the DNR today, everyone does need to come to work. We allow, of course, the Zoom and the other types of platforms, Microsoft Teams, etc., to actually be part of the daily work. But we are very much a field operation. There is a central office, so everyone must be physically present. We are migrating, though, some of the processes had become digitalized because of the pandemic. So you're now able to apply for an ECC, for example, for the Environmental Credit Certificate regionally. And so what we're working to do now is working on the mesh work that actually will have the central office have visibility of what's going on in the regions. So that kind of mesh work needs to happen. It didn't happen over the pandemic. We also use, of course, a lot of sensors in our work in terms of monitoring environmental parameters. We have a continuous emissions monitoring system, for example, for some of our cement companies, some of our power companies, and that data is continuously fed back near real time to our Environmental Management Bureau. We're able to take stock of what's going on there, analyze the air quality, for example, and then come up with either notice of violation or, of course, cite them for being within the parameters. So there's a lot of that going on presently. I should also say that we're moving towards the creation of a national natural resource geospatial database, and that will actually entail the use of remote sensing as well as the use of ground-based observation, which may sometimes be, of course, on a digital platform fed to us, in order for us to establish the baselines for all our natural resources in the country. So that comes from biodiversity data, for example, minerals and the production that is going on in different mining activities, but also, of course, water quality, air quality, and other types of environmental parameters. Thanks.
These are newer technologies, Sectoni, that you're going to implement for DNR. I was chatting with you earlier, you were talking about near real-time data. If not real-time, it's very important, right? For sensors, it's all about the Internet of Things. Maybe artificial intelligence can come into play in the future, at some future point. And that's very refreshing to hear, especially coming from the public sector. Thank you, Sector. So let's get into a little bit more serious talk about facing adversity, challenges as women leaders. I'll start with you, Liza. If you could share, what were some of the biggest challenges that your company, pick a company, has faced? Maybe give us some insights on what you implemented, technology, philosophy, or otherwise, programs and processes that you can further elaborate.
Okay, so I guess the biggest challenge that, how would I say this? Maybe I can pick a few pain points in the conglomerate that were addressed by digital transformation. Is that where, okay, so I would say that in my experience as head of the digital transformation office for the past 3 years, my insights are that digital tools in themselves will not solve the problem, and that what is more important is the culture that you build. Because in order for you to take advantage of digital platforms, you need to break the silos within the company in order for you to optimize and leverage these digital solutions. So case in point, our corporate HR wanted to lead an employee experience transformation to be led from the center. And if we had done it in the past where IT creates a solution based on what CHR thinks the employees need, this was the old way of working. And we knew, based on our experience, that HR would end up creating a unusable product. So we said, sige, why don't because we had many problems with the employee experience. For example, the employees didn't know, what the benefits were. They were calling people, and then they were trying to track, where in the journey was, for example, their documents or their request. So there were several of these problems. No? And so what we did was we said, okay, why don't we form a cross-functional employee experience team made up of people from HR, IT, digital transformation, and shared services. And then we started with design thinking. We started with mapping the entire employee journey from start to finish, understanding where their pain points were. Then we said, okay, these are the employee pain points. You guys have to work in an agile manner. we have to prioritize, what will, what are the solutions that will solve these problems, and they don't necessarily have to be digital. So in the end, we came up with a solution which was super, super successful and super efficient for the employees. But had we started with a solution, a digital platform, first, without understanding or mapping out the journey of the employees, we would really have ended up with an unusable product. And I think this is, and we apply the same framework with something called the supplier experience, because we were notorious for paying our suppliers super, super late, right? And so we use the same framework, design thinking, agile project management, to solve the same problem. Because normally, it's because you have siloed departments, and that's why you cannot serve your customer properly. And so these are the things that we have solved using, agile design thinking, etc. Using data to solve problems as simple as that.
Right, and it's interesting because what our CEO, President and CEO Al talked about earlier was about infinite leadership, right? And you can always have the technology or platforms at your fingertips, but if there is no will of changing, and especially looking at the journey of not just your customer, but also your internal customers, I think, right? Then nothing would be, it would be, to your point, an unusable product. I'm looking at you, Liza, I'm seeing Laurelie nodding and smiling. I think it's the same, if not.
No, I totally agree. I think at the beginning, you need to be clear. What is the problem you're trying to solve? As Liza mentioned, if you start with a solution, you might not actually be clear on what is it you're actually trying to solve. So I think it is very important. And I agree in terms of just, there's a whole other things and dynamics around the methodology does matter very much. Questions about the biggest challenge. And I think the biggest challenge is really the fact that we were going through a crisis of uncertainty. Yeah? In all aspects. And we were in a situation, everyone was in a situation unprecedented. The last significant pandemic was the Spanish flu in 1908. So I think that was that. And it's quite a lot to take in. So I think for me, one, it was making sure that from a people perspective, that our employees were physically and mentally well. They were healthy. And it is quite different when you don't see them every day. And even if we use MS Teams as well, at the beginning, I think now more and more people are comfortable turning on video. At the beginning, not everyone was as well, so you cannot really see the verbal cues, facial expressions. So I think that's one. And it had an impact. The situation exacerbated a number of things in the industry, in the country, in the economy. I mentioned earlier mobility, and when you have a lockdown the next day and you see traffic the next day, nothing. So mobility was greatly affected. And that's a big part of what we do. I mentioned that there was a weakening of refinery margins before the pandemic, and that was exacerbated because of demand destruction. And the industries that we supported as well were also quite different. We also have a foundation and work with our fence line communities, and that was also a big change for our people and the communities. The delivery of the programs we had was very much face-to-face, and the communities we worked with did not necessarily have the technologies available at their fingertips as well. So we really needed to have a hard look at you mentioned customers and users as well for us, externally, and our internal users and our business and the business models that we have. And we already had a digital journey, but that really accelerated things. So how did it impact our business? So we did have a change in our supply chain model. So we used to be part refining, part import. We switched to a fully import model, converting our refinery to a world-class import terminal. But on one hand, these things always have a shadow. I think on the people side, while it was such a difficult time for people, you also saw the strength of the human spirit. So when you look at the business side, while we had to convert to fully import, it also meant that we needed to open more import terminals, and we're still continuing to do that. Also looking at changing offerings that we have for our customers. We have Shell Select, we have other clip-ins, and we expanded that to be more inclusive, not just to motorists, but also to passengers as well, and converting retail stations into mobility destinations. And then from a technical and digital perspective, then we accelerated that. As Liza mentioned, digital and technology is so much beyond the technology. Technology is a big part of it, but it's a mindset, it's a behavior, it's how you integrate workflows, how you enhance the customer experience. So it was important for us not to have a strategy and a digital journey, but to integrate the digital plan with the business strategy. And then also look at the mindsets and the behaviors, and not just accelerating the technology, but in accelerating the digital culture within the company as well.
Right. I hear these two things coming from yourself, Laurie and Liza, about culture, right? Of course, it has been a disruptive couple of years that, to your points, the shift into digital has been accelerated, if not forced, maybe? I don't know. I guess my question, Cecil, in Land Bank, do you guys advocate this type of digital transformation? And if so, where would you say Land Bank is in terms of transforming digitally for your customers?
Yes, very much so. Starting with the internal customers of Latam employees, we have had a series of seminars and briefings on our own employees, especially those handling information assets, to leverage the digital technologies available out there to enable them to curate much needed during the height of the pandemic. So, yeah, it's a, and we had to work very fast because the need was urgent. Like in the case of the DSWD, they have 10 million beneficiaries under the conditional cash transfer program and the unconditional cash transfer program. So we worked with the DSWD to make the land bank. It used to be a one-way account, prepaid cards through transactional card, meaning other parties can actually top up those cards, and those cards can now be used by the beneficiaries to pay for the merchandise that they get from sari-sari stores that are also in our ecosystem, and also, of course, the utility companies. So it was challenging, it was hard, but we were able to do it in collaboration with the local government units and the other government agencies. So we did it by partnering with these agencies and also the reputable service providers and the tech side.
Right. And you talked about data. Anyone want to show you that? No, okay. No. That's right. But what I'm trying to say, Cesar, is that you really cater to your customers. It's like in parallel, while you were anticipating the surge, well, not the surge, it's a wrong word, but in terms of the data that's going around, right, almost 100%, if not more, data that's coming around because of the e-commerce ecosystem that you built for your 1.9 million government and public sector employees.
The 10 million DSWD beneficiaries.
I can just imagine the type of mind shaping that happened at the time, right?
I'm just very fortunate to have a very agile team working in a bank. So they embrace the digitalization of process 100%.
And I'll talk to Secto because I was discussing with her. I know that she's an advocate of digitalization and digitization of processes internal to DNR. You want to talk about that, Secto, a little bit?
Thank you very much. Well, essentially, perhaps I differ a little bit from our three other panelists here that our clients and customers are not just people, but ecosystems. Our indigenous flora and fauna, those are our clients and customers as well. And so the way we are using digital technologies at this point, and you mentioned earlier, we are putting a lot of emphasis on IoT to be able to actually gather data, environmental data, to be used in observation, monitoring, analysis, and to speed up what I'm calling the DNR's OODA loop. We have a very slow OODA loop at the moment because we are mostly paper. And once you have paper, each hand that touches the paper actually takes a little bit of time, as you know. And so we're hoping that this type of platforms will in fact speed up our design of the different interventions, design of solutions, make them more collaborative because then we can be more transparent in terms of sharing that data with partners who we know can contribute to solutions. Nature-based solutions in particular require an element of observation over time. And without that over time observation, we cannot design the proper intervention. And so with the type of instruments that are now available and the platforms that will actually relay the data to us near real time over the terms that we actually need to collect that data, that will enable us to actually sharpen our focus in terms of the interventions we need. I should say here our work is also from ridge to reef, and therefore we're just as conscious of the forests and the headwaters as we are as the urban systems that actually rely on them, and certainly the coastal and marine ecosystems that actually we support, and actually in some cases mitigate the risks that they face because of climate change and other types of disasters. So early warning systems, for example, as part of the observation systems that are required, also rely on connectivity, also rely on the collection of data in the proper time. And without these technologies and technological platforms, we would not be able to cope with some of the rapid changes that are taking place because of climate change. So global warming has really led to this extreme uncertainty in our work environment. We are in the process, and our core business is really managing value from. And so the key here is really how do we make decisions? How fast is that we do in order for us to make our decisions relevant to the changing times?
And it makes sense because obviously these are going to be data-driven decisions. You can be more predictive. You can understand exactly, predict outcomes before they actually happen.
So the issue is really how evidence-based our decisions have been. And if we're able to establish the evidence, the transparency and accountability in terms of the solutions that we design and the way we implement them will really be enhanced by the adoption of these technologies.
Thank you so much, Secretary. Since we're on the topic anyway of global warming and climate change, I wanted to ask what your sustainability philosophies or programs are that's running within your own organizations. Maybe I can start with you, Laura Lee.
Yeah. So globally, we have a strategy called Powering Progress. And Powering Progress seeks to provide more and cleaner energy solutions for the future at pace with society. So there are 4 pillars to the Powering Progress strategy. One is generating shareholder value. The second one is powering lives. The third is respecting nature. And the fourth one is net zero emissions by 2050 at pace with society. So globally, that's what our strategy is. At the heart of that strategy is sustainability. So what are we doing? And I guess this is indeed a longer-term journey. So what are we doing locally? So I guess we have to look to ourselves first in terms of how we operate and look at our operations. And that means for us, if you look at real estate, the green offices, green spaces for us, the easier ones with the LED inverter technology, but then we also have mobility sites for the future. So if you look at, so far we have 3 in the Philippines, and it's actually a pilot globally. We operate in 80 countries around the world, and we started it in the Philippines. It ties up with what I mentioned on retail stations being mobility destinations. And these mobility sites for the future, then in terms of how we build it and how we set it up, then we have rain catchers, so we basically recycle rain. We also have irrigation systems for plant walls. We use eco-bricks, so this is your shredded laminated plastic, and you mix it with cement, and you get 3 types of eco-bricks. It's circular economy. So we use there are bricks meant for buildings, meant for walls, meant for pavements, and then for pavements, aside from that, we also have bitumen fresh air. So it's 40% lower carbon emissions. And actually, if you would like to smell it, it actually smells better as well. It smells like detergent, like downy type of things. So what else do we do? And then we also have friendlier spaces, so biker spaces and others. And then, so that's how we operate. And then in terms of the products that we sell, then we continue. Bitumen fresh air is one of those. Lubricants like Helix 0W, that one's produced carbon neutral in the entire supply, in the entire production of that. So that's something that we do. We are in a renewable space, so we do power trading, mainly on renewables. We've also entered an agreement to form a joint venture in the onshore solar, wind, and battery energy storage as well. The other things for us is also in terms of the Philippine National Foundation, then we're developing programs with the youth, with our communities, in terms of how to innovate for the future, how to reimagine the future as well. And another thing that we are doing is nature-based solutions, as I mentioned that, and nature and environment solutions as well. And some of the more recent things, electronic vehicle charging facility. So we have the first direct charging, so fast charger. So it will take optimum charging for 30 minutes. So some people might think that is slow, but if you look at the AC chargers, that could take 9 hours to 11 hours. So perspective, these are in the mobility side, so you can also have 2 coffees, and recharge yourself or recharge your car. Solutions or applications, so we make it easier as well. Instead of people having to go to some of our sites that they can transact through mobile apps as well. And then we are offering carbon offsets, mainly initially for B2B customers, but we're slowly offering it to B2C customers as well.
That's a whole lot of initiatives on sustainability. Liza, how about the walking away group? Anything interesting that we can get insights?
Yeah. Yes, thanks, Chef. I think the first when Lance took over the group, he had 4 pillars that he wanted to promote for his strategy. So among them, of course, was digital transformation, and the second was sustainability. So every single group, every single strategic business unit does have a sustainability in their scorecard. So every president has sustainability in their scorecard. Maybe I can just cite a few examples of what has been done. For example, Robinson's Land, all of their malls already have solar panels, and about 20% of all the energy consumed, for example, in Robinson's malls are renewable energy. And then URC, of course we are in JG Petrochemicals, and while, we realize that the use of plastic is necessary, but it is the waste that, the plastic waste that has to be treated properly. And knowing that, URC, Universal Robina Corporation, started a cross-BU agile project with the other business units like Robinson's Land and Robinson's Retail, and they are about to roll out, for example, a collection hubs across the malls and the retail groups to have proper disposal and recovery of these plastic, for example. And then URC also has been working with potato farmers to make sure that yields of their crops are much more efficient. Also, we've been investigating the use of more of packaging that is more environmentally friendly. So even Cebu Pacific has been investigating the use of more sustainable aviation fuel. But we do recognize that it is very critical for companies, especially conglomerates like us, to be part of the solution for this sustainable future.
It's interesting to me that you mentioned that plastic is essential, but it's the waste that needs to be taken care of, right? I mean, there are some municipalities, I think, that have employed a zero plastic policy, I think, in the past, but I guess we see them propping up. They're still here, right? It's really more about how you take care of the waste from plastic. How about Cesar and Lana? Anything that we can know about from a sustainability standpoint?
Yeah, very strong supporter of any project that will enable communities to adapt to climate change. Climate change is real, and we have seen a lot of our LGU customers suffering from the adverse effects of climate change. So we have packaged lending programs fitted to address the particular requirement of the local community. So together with these LGUs, we have financed more climate resilient infrastructure to prevent some communities from flooding. And also on the waste management side, we have financed billions of pesos to enable the LGUs to properly manage solid waste and also to treat their waterways secretary. So we do that for our customers. And as a matter of policy and procedure, we require all our borrowers to have environmental clearance certificate. No? And I'm glad to hear that you're also reviewing the processes, and if they can get their certificates online or digitally, that will be a big help for the companies that need those clearances for their projects to be implemented. So we do a lot of those. Internally, for the non-bank, we're actually embarking on a new building management system that we hope to result to about 50% reduction in our energy consumption. So we're embarking on that. And well, seemingly small things like making the operations more paper-like are, I think, helping. So yeah, we do it internally, and we also help our customers make their activities more environmental friendly and enable them to adapt to climate change.
Yeah, yes, Secretary, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Ma'am. That's what
Glad to be a bridge.
I just wanted to add that, in fact, we speak a lot about new term sustainability, and I'd like to introduce at this point something that we've been talking to corporations about. In terms of their ESG investments and their sustainability reporting, we'd like to introduce the word resilience. And Ma'am just said it in terms of the type of adaptation financing that's being made available. Well, we work a lot on emissions reduction and energy efficiency, the shift to renewables. We really need to pay attention to the vulnerability that exists today. And adaptation financing is actually the key. How we're able to package that, and the Land Bank has been actually pioneering in terms of this, is really to address the vulnerability by unpacking it in terms of the people that are involved, in terms of the ecosystems and processes, if they are in fact industrial activities that are related to whatever is being requested for financing. At this point, we must not lose sight of resilience, because while we work with hazards that we know, and that's where disaster risk reduction comes from, we're also looking at possible hazards in the future. And those scenarios continue to change. They are dynamic. As data comes in, the climate models are updated. The scenarios then are churned out. And the different scenarios, combining our shared socioeconomic pathways with greenhouse gas emissions levels that we're able to generate, actually should be guiding our national development policies as well as the local interventions that we're trying to finance. So adaptation, disaster risk reduction should be made part, hopefully, of also the sustainability efforts of each of the corporations, not just looking at their own processes, but the ecosystems and communities that are impacted by their business activities. And this includes, of course, the MSMEs, all the way down the supply and value chains that are in fact having to cope with the different changes in the environment, but may not have the resources, in fact, to actually make those transitions in order to make themselves survive through rapidly evolving environmental content. So I just wanted to inject that. Sustainability and resilience need to be part of the same effort.
Yeah, I like the word that you use, resilience, obviously. This is, I think, how we can describe each of our organizations, obviously, inclusive of the PLDT group. Maybe in the next few minutes, I wanted to talk a little bit more personally. You guys mentioned that, we've been talking tech the whole day, and I guess people would want to know exactly where you are when it comes to your leadership styles, right? That you've been saying that culture is a huge part of digital transformation. We just want to find out exactly how you would describe your leadership style and why you think it's successful. I don't even talk about this as a freebie thing. It's something that probably our audience and our delegates would want to find out, especially in a panel such as powerful as you ladies. Cecily, understand?
Yeah, I think I've always anchored my leadership style and service excellence, and it is actually a continuing pursuit for me to instill that kind of mindset among the members of the non-bank team. And service excellence to me is means going the extra mile for the customer, and not only meeting their expectations but exceeding their expectations. our co-workers.
Service excellence, and this is more of you serving others as a leader, right? What about you, Liza? How would you describe your leadership style? I know it's a little bit of a curveball, but I'm actually personally interested to find out exactly how you guys run your day.
Sure. So I think my leadership style is very situational. It really depends on the situation. When Summit Media when we had to close our magazines 4 years ago, from the largest magazine publisher, we had to totally shift our strategy. So we were like super relaxed for 20 years, and then suddenly, so that was a situation that was very difficult for me because I had built a business and suddenly I was so good at it, and then we had to change the whole group. So that one, I think that one, depending on the situation, like in that situation, I had just to roll up my sleeves and communicate a lot to my people and present a new vision to them, and then talk about organizational change and have you have to have the courage to say those who cannot follow, or those who cannot into the next part of the journey, then we have to say goodbye, and then you have the courage to hire new people. But then, depending on where you are, like for example, I also work in the conglomerate where I work with I'm very lucky to lead a very competent group of corporate center unit people, where it's not existential. Then you practice a different kind of leadership. Here is where you say, okay, you just provide direction, you make sure you hire the right people, and then you just provide coaching, and make sure that they have to lead themselves, right? So it really, to me, it really depends on the situation. But I think I agree that you really have to serve. You have to serve with purpose. And the purpose is you have to understand what motivates you. And what motivates me is like I want, for example, for Summit, I want to continue running a company that entertains people, that informs people. And then my purpose in the digital transformation office is to make sure that the group continues to be future-proof, so that we can continue to employ 90,000 people and support their families and help the business. So there always has to be a purpose for why you do things, and you have to communicate that purpose, I think, to your teams. Yeah.
And wearing many hats obviously will probably not force you, but I guess that's where the situational type of leadership and flexibility comes in, right? It really depends. What you're saying is that it depends on where you are in your corporate journey. If it's wartime, then like what you said, you need to roll up your sleeves. But if you need a different kind of leadership, wherein I guess more diplomatic ways are needed, and that's how probably you would go about your day and your team, right? And it goes without saying that it's also serving others. I would be very interested also to find out, Laurie, how is your leadership style? You have been with Shell for the past 20 years, right? And what's interesting when I researched is that you had a weekly trip from Dubai to Iraq. Right? So these are just some contextual things that came into my head. So how would you describe your leadership style?
For me, I think it is very important, and I say this to everyone actually, what is important is to continue to develop yourself into different leadership styles, different management styles, and different influencing styles. Because you will be faced with different situations, different stakeholders. I think based on the experience that you have, it has been quite a lot. So listening to Liza, yes, for me it is different. So when I'm leading a response to Taal volcano erupting, or Typhoon Odette, where you actually have retail stations with no roofs, staff with their employees with their kids sleeping with the roofs. It's a very different leadership style compared to when I am leading a transformation or an innovation. Even if I look at evolution versus transformation, it is quite different. So it is important that you develop a wide range of these styles and these skills, but indeed in terms from a philosophy perspective, that it has to link with your values. You have to be able to face yourself in the mirror and be happy with what you see. And also, you have to have meaning as well, making a positive impact. So linking with that purpose, and if you want to more simplistically ask the question, how do you want to be remembered? You don't want this discussion where you've already passed. It's good to think about it. And I guess for me, it's in the different roles I play. As a leader, as a president CEO, but also as a mother, as a daughter, as a wife. I'm asking the question, so from a philosophy perspective, I do anchor on that, aside from the leadership styles, which can be situational depending on what you want to achieve. How you want to move and motivate people.
Yeah, and that's it, right? It's purpose-driven leadership. I like what you said about you want to be able to, at the end of the day, be able to face yourself in the mirror, and that you know that your values are intact while being a leader. I also resonate well with your leadership style. You said the leadership style of being a wife. I also am affected by that. But thank you for that answer, Laureline. Secretary Tony, your insights on your leadership style.
I guess everyone has said much of what I want to say, the excellence and the pride of leadership in terms of the context and what's needed in terms of the particular state that your organization needs. And of course, contextually, Lorelai's experience really has allowed her to become agile and of course have great insight. I think that insight is extremely important for a leader. You need to understand what is going on above ground and of course with the other currents that are at play. I think at the very basic level, philosophically, the leader should, at least in my present position, should regard this job as a stewardship. Natural capital of the country doesn't belong to you in the Vietnam. It belongs to everyone in the country and it belongs to itself, natural capital being what it is. And without that sense of stewardship, it's very easy to lose your way. Because at the end of the day, what is the core value that drives your integrity and your level of service to those that are needing your support and your actual particular set of skills, as well as your permits, as Mama was saying. So we do need to have a sense of stewardship. And secondly, I think that at this point, we cannot help but be transdisciplinary. In academia, we are structured in silos. And so each discipline does what they would like to do in terms of the particular direction that the research and academics would like to take it. But at this point, knowledge needs to cross boundaries. And it's not just being multidisciplinary, it's being transdisciplinary. And trans there being learning from communities themselves. Local knowledge, traditional knowledge in particular, has very much to do with the way we manage risk today. And understanding and respecting that, as well as culture and identity, making that part of the way you make decisions. I think that the respect for that needs to be part and parcel of one's leadership style. Eventually, I do think that all of us have similar demands, being mothers, wives, as you mentioned. One of my identities, according to my children, is the disaster lady. That's what I used to be called by my kids because I would come home and say, you know what happened today, there was a landslide, and I would say, Mom, stop. We would pass a very steep road going to Baguio, and I'd say, look, there is nothing, there are no camels, there is nothing to stop the landslide. We say, stop, we don't want to hear it. I think eventually we also need to know how to regulate our own selves and then step into the roles that that are in the proper context. And so being a wife, mother, friend, I think that those are very, very valuable roles that also form part of the leadership style of all of us as a team. So that's where I would be coming from.
Yeah, that's very entertaining. And it's very hard for me to describe you, Secretary Tony, as the disaster lady. There are very different interpretations to those words. But what stuck with me was that it's about stewardship, right? It's not something that we own. It's similar to what Laurie said earlier. It's about leaving a legacy. And you're also a learning leader, right? You want to understand exactly and learn from others, right? That's about all the time that we have for this session. Very interesting. But before we go, another curveball, sorry ladies, I will steal what my colleague Kathy asked Magic Johnson as a final word. Since the theme of this event is boundless anyway, I wanted to go once around the room to you guys what boundless means to you and how that word resonates. Right? You being women leaders, defy a lot of odds and limits. How does boundless resonate with you? This time I'll start with you, Secretary Tony. Boundless, the word boundless.
It's not fair, you give me time to think. So in terms of boundaries, I think, if you imagine yourself having an edge, then you can describe what boundless means. In terms of, I guess, my own personal trajectory, I've never felt there were limitations to what one could do if you really love the work and if you love what you want to do in the future. And so for me, I would say boundless means no limits as far as with the level of service that you could deliver if you really love the work.
Thank you, Sec Tony. Laurie?
Okay. I was actually going to say limitless, but since Tony already says limitless, so for me it is daring to reimagine the future.
Daring to reimagine the future. Thank you, Laurie. Liza?
I think, I was going to use that, but just kidding. No, I think I always feel I can achieve many things when I work with a team that's really gelled together. It's about working together, I think, with a strong, passionate, and united team, and then you feel that you can achieve things and things are limitless. That's what I think.
Thank you, Liza. And finally,
For banks like LATBA, as a national development financial institution, it's easy to measure our performance in terms of numbers. Like a typical bank, so our net income, our liquidity, our capital ratios, there are numbers attached to those metrics. So, and boundless to me is can be equated to immeasurable, no measure of outcomes, and that is what is important for organizations like LATBA, like more than the numbers that are imposed on us, not just by our board, but by our regulators, what the outcome, the quality of lives of the people that we serve, the communities that we serve, will be very important. But how can you put numbers to the quality of life? So probably later on some mathematicians or scientists will come up with numbers, but right now it's the possibilities of improving the lives of our customers is boundless. That to me is the meaning of boundless.
wow. You're very well said. I promised I would do this, but thank you very much. I know that we had a set of questions, but that's all the time that we have. Thank you very much, Cecil, Liza, Laurie, and Sec Tony. Another round of applause for our wonderful leader panelists.
I'm curious, what did Magic Johnson say?
Oh, Magic Johnson said, well, that's boundless, that's Magic Johnson. That's what he said. He didn't say it quite like that. But he said that he was going to hang bound this over his mantle and say that that's, it's a new word. But yeah, thank you for asking. He didn't say it quite like that. Again, thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you.
Back to you, Danny.